Well, hello everyone, and thanks to all of you that took to Twitter and sent in your questions for this NFL slash sports slash whatever else you want to ask about and get answers about Q&A video. Try and continue to do one of these per week during the NFL season. Thanks so far for your participation and your cooperation. Remember, at the Jeff Schlegel is the Twitter handle. Give me a follow. Don't be afraid to ask me questions in general there and interact with me. I won't bite, I don't believe, anyways. So let's go ahead and get started with this one. Let's see what type of questions we've got. Fleek Anik starts us off by asking, what are your thoughts on the Carmelo Anthony trade and how OKC will do now? I'm not going to give you that answer now. You will have to tune in a little bit later when I actually do a video on that topic on this channel. So that's called a teaser, bitches. Stay tuned. That video should be fun. Ruben Moss asks, and oh God, I knew this question was going to come today. Thoughts on Donald Trump's latest rant? Ugh. If athletes are supposed to stick to sports, shouldn't politicians have to stick to politics? That'll be the first question. The second question is, everybody does realize what they're dealing with here, right? Right? If you've ever wondered what would happen if an internet troll was president of the United States, you have your answer. And that's exactly what it feels like. A goddamn internet troll is the president of the United States. And it's tough because he says incredibly stupid, idiotic things. Oftentimes, what he tweets now has been contradicted by things that he has tweeted 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years in the past. So there's that point of it. There's just the stupidity in many of the things that he tweets about that are just unbelievably unbelievable. But then you wonder, does reacting to it in the way that so many people do really do any good? The best way to deal with a troll is typically to ignore them, and eventually they get bored, lose interest, and they go away. But while I understand why people are upset, and I understand where people are coming from, I'm not necessarily knocking them for that. At some point in time, are we all going to be that easily triggered about every idiotic, dumb thing this guy says? And is that the best course of action to try and get that bum out of office in 2020? And the very simple answer to me is no. It's not. Because the simple fact of the matter is, there are millions upon millions of Americans who knew what Donald Trump represented, I believe, understood what he was actually saying, and didn't care, and in many cases actually liked it. So getting all butthurt and crazy about it now is not going to change the opinions of those people. The best way to combat somebody like a Donald Trump is attach him to bad policies and attach him to bad decisions and his ineffectiveness as a leader. Those are the type of things that will help, combined with actually finding a legitimate candidate that doesn't have the massive baggage that a Hillary Rodham Clinton did, that everybody can unite behind and get behind in 2020. For those that support Donald Trump, I ask you one simple question. Why? And what in the world makes you think that this guy is qualified to be president when every day he gives you examples of why he's not? On the flip side, for those that are talking about the taking a knee on Sunday and all of this other stuff, I ask a very simple question. Why? And as inconvenient as this truth is going to be, it is still a truth. All of your protesting and all of your kneeling isn't going to change a damn thing. And it is what it is, like it or not. Now, ultimately, I'm not going to crap on people for exercising their First Amendment rights, just as I did not crap on the Nazis and white supremacists who exercised their First Amendment rights in Charlottesville up until the point that you started to get violence. Violence is not the answer for sure, but the whole point of the Constitution and the First Amendment is to not just protect popular speech, but to protect unpopular speech as well. And, you know, people talking about if all these players take a knee, then I'm going to boycott the NFL. I'm not going to watch. So you're talk about believing in free speech, but only when you agree with it. Then to the people that are sitting there saying, I'm going to support the players that are taking a stand and taking a knee by boycotting the NFL and not watching. So your answer to the bigger, larger social problems that are still prevalent in our society is to protest a league by boycotting a league where the majority of the players are black, which could eventually affect their ability to make the same level of living that they do right now. I don't really see where that's a good answer. I think what you saw Saturday on Twitter was a lot of people getting caught up in a lot of emotions and not enough thinking. And what's really heartbreaking is you have people in Houston and Florida, and especially in the islands in the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, what have you, that are still in bad shape and in a bad way. And instead of focusing on that, predictably, everybody got sucked in by one of the truly greatest internet trolls we have ever seen. I mean, he is like the ultimate puppet master, and everybody got sucked in. My ultimate thing for Trump is, don't you have bigger and better, more important fish to fry? Aren't there bigger, more important, pressing issues for you to deal with? Other than that, I wish we could stick to sports, and I understand why we won't, and I understand why we don't. But in large part, I look to sports as an avenue, a pathway to get away from the daily reminders of the idiot in chief that's in the White House and all of that. I want an escape from that. And more, it's just yet another reminder that I can't escape the reality of what is currently going on in this country. That's frustrating to me. Sports has always been my escape. And now I can't escape the reality because that reality has carried over and it sucks for me. It is what it is. But I'm going to do what I've done throughout my entire adult life. When I'm watching the Bears game tomorrow and other football games and the NFL shows the national anthem because the federal government, the military, is paying them to do so, I will protest how I've protested my entire adult life by sitting my ass on my couch while the national anthem is played. I'm not getting up for that shit. I've been doing that for 18 years now. I'm not about to change now, but that's what a lot of people frankly do, and a lot of the people that are bitching about the players taking a knee are doing the same type of crap that I am. Just saying. Let's move on, though. Blicky19, thoughts on how mediocre the Patriots defense is. We're 2 games through the season, so a lot of football still to go. But right now, it doesn't look very good. And I think part of that is a reflection of years of, frankly, poor drafting on the defensive side of the ball. But again, it is ultimately 2 games. 2 games. So a lot of time for them to right the ship and fix it. But there are serious concerns. Johan Ortiz, are you an atheist? And your thoughts on the rise of it and the lack of government representation of that belief. I'm not an atheist. I can easily understand why other people are. And to me, it would be the most logical way to look at things. But sometimes this is frankly an illogical world. There are things I've seen, things I've heard, things I've felt, things I've experienced that make me think there is something greater than what I understand. And I don't even pretend to try and understand everything. I believe there is some type of higher power, and maybe part of that is wanting to believe that there is some type of higher power. But I think there's evidence of a certain kind there. But again, based off of pure empirical data, the most sensible thing to be is an atheist. Because to sit there and believe in some of the things that the Bible has and the Bible teaches, it's just pure lunacy. I'm just saying. But I'm not surprised that there's really a lack of representation of that viewpoint, because so many politicians run away from anything remotely controversial when it comes to religion. And I understand, because frankly, when it comes to religions and people's gods and their stupid fucking guns, everybody gets too butthurt about it, and that's just the way it is. So that's probably, Johan, not going to change anytime soon. And also, you ask, why didn't you support Bernie Sanders in the past election? Number one, you would ask me, you seemed like it was just about his age and not really about his stances. Number one, was his age. I don't want angry mid-70s grandpa running the country. See, Donald Trump. To me, there should be an age limit. Senior citizens should not be president. If they weren't young enough to serve in the military in some type of capacity, because they'd be forced to retire once they get past a certain age, to me, that's too old for them to be commander-in-chief of the armed forces. I'm just saying. Second, I did not particularly like the way he ran the early stages of his campaign. Now, granted, he was going up against a Wasserman Schultz infrastructure from the DNC that was clearly going to stack everything in Hillary's favor, and did everything they could to stack it in Hillary's favor. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz, fuck you, thank you. You're as responsible for Donald Trump as any fucking buddy. But I thought when he was sitting there and trying to impress everybody based off of the size of the crowds that he could draw and getting 10 to 15,000 people, it was mostly white people. He wasn't doing enough early on enough to talk about some of the social and economic causes that he fought over the years. And instead of doing a speech in front of 10,000 white people in New Hampshire, he should have been focusing on going into inner cities and reading to kids at an all-black school in the library. You know, going to homeless shelters, going to soup kitchens. That's the way that his campaign should have been run. That's where it should have started. In terms of some of his other issues, I think, just like pure capitalism is not always the answer, pure socialism is not always the answer. And I think sometimes he gets too caught up in the wealthiest of this and the wealthiest of that. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of truth in what he says. But eventually you kind of get tired of hearing the talking point, because that's largely what it is. It's a talking point. And in certain cases, it is just one factor of many factors when it comes to particular issues. So no, I didn't like Angry Grandpa. That's the way I looked at it. I'm sorry. Jack McCarthy, who will be in the college football playoff at the end of the year? Great question. At this point, you would assume Alabama, either Oklahoma or Oklahoma State. So you finally probably get a Big 12 team in there this year. Maybe somebody from the Big 10, but I'm not particularly sure. And probably Clemson. Be the best I could guess at this point. Alex Shirley 10, when's it time for Henry to take over as the Titans starting running back? Derrick Henry's probably going to be your feature ball carrier soon enough, so stay patient. And also, is John Fox just another version of Jeff Fisher? Now, granted, I'm no fan of John Fox, and I can't wait for him to be shown the door, but I do think it's a little insulting to compare him to Jeff Fisher, because ultimately John Fox did take two different organizations to the Super Bowl, and was a part of quick, immediate turnaround projects in both Carolina and Denver. And you could talk about in Denver, well, it's a lot easier to go to a Super Bowl when you have Peyton Manning. That's true. But he also, in his second year in Carolina, took that team to the Super Bowl, where they gave the Patriots as much of a game as anybody did in a Super Bowl outside of the Giants. And he did that with Jake Delhomme as a starting quarterback. So, no, he doesn't compare to Jeff Fisher. He's better. It's just I think the game has passed him by, and his conservative nature is not very prudent if a team wants to do things, big things. Courtney Centimore, how long until Mitchell Trubisky finally takes over? If it was up to John Fox, he wouldn't take over at all this year, honestly, or at least until the Bears were officially eliminated from the playoff race. It's got to be soon. Whether that comes week 4 against Green Bay or the next week, I just can't see a good football rationale or justification at this point for Mike Glennon being the starting quarterback. If the guy can't move, can't stretch the field with his arm, he can't see the defenses, and he's turning the ball over, the rookie could do all of those things, except the rookie can actually move. The rookie has a better arm. He can make more big-time NFL throws. There just is no real, true football justification at this point, period. Ahmed, specific reason for the lack of WWE attendance lately, or is it a combination of factors? I can't believe, typically, Ahmed, we ask the wrestling-related questions on OTR Essential, but I will answer it here for sure. You can't say there's one specific reason for the troubles of WWE in terms of attendance. And the people that say it's because of a Roman Reigns, or it's because of this, or because of that, it's an incredible oversimplification of much bigger, deeper-seated issues that have been bubbling under the surface for years and are starting to manifest again. And I've talked about them before in the OTR Essential channel, so I'm not going to talk about them again here. But it's not any one specific person to blame, outside of maybe Vince McMahon, ultimately, because he's the HNIC of all that you see when it comes to WWE. MDC, what should MLB do to improve pace of play? Great question. Improving pace of play. I would like to see them cut entirely out the catcher going up to the pitcher and them having a discussion. That would be one quick, easy way to do it. I would say this too, when it comes to replay, we shouldn't have to wait for the dugout to sit there and go this or that and then have to go through it. Like, these things should be able to be replayed relatively instantaneously. There should be a decision within 30 seconds to a minute. It shouldn't have to wait for a challenge to do all this other crap. There's other things I suppose you could do. But I could be wise ass and say change it to 2 strikes and 3 balls instead of 3 strikes 4 balls. But I don't know if that's gonna work. Let's see here. Creative Love 19, best candidate for the Democratic Party in 2020. Another great, interesting question. Some of the names you're obviously going to see bantied about are Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. You're going to obviously hear a ton about Cory Booker. I think somebody's positioning yourself more and more to run in 2020 is Kamala Harris. You might hear a little bit more about Amy Klobuchar, the senator from Minnesota. The one dark horse I would throw in there, I say dark horse with this ginger ass, but the one dark horse I would say that might be in play in 2020 might be Joseph Kennedy III. He's currently a congressman. I think he's only in his late 30s. You got the Kennedy name, so you got the Kennedy star power. He's young, he's exciting. Just as a purely dark horse name, he's somebody I throw out there in the mix. Right now, the best candidate right now, you could say Cory Booker, but man, some of his thoughts and views on big banks and the financial system aren't great. And he would have a hard time reconciling that with some of the liberal base in the Democratic Party in 2020. Even Kamala Harris, who's positioning herself well in certain cases, coming from her days of being a prosecuting attorney and an attorney general, there are going to be some types of skeletons in the closet that somebody's going to be able to unveil, and how bad is that going to look for her? Especially if she's talking about making the justice system actually provide justice for all, not just for some that look like me. But I would say right now the best candidate, because if you get to a point where Trump starts to do some Trumpian things, the media can go in a different direction than they can with white people, frankly, like Sanders, like Warren. Trump would have to be careful with Booker a little bit too. And there would be a lot of people come 2020 that would be kind of nostalgic for the Obama era, honestly. And they would look at Booker as potentially another Obama. So the safe option would be Cory Booker. But even he is going to have some questions. He's unmarried, so people are going to talk about sexuality. They're going to talk about different things. Him creeping into strippers' DMs. There's all types of different things out there. But just a dark horse to think about would be Joseph Kennedy III. Ronnie Simmons, can the Rams win the division title this year? If the Seattle Seahawks offense continues to look as doo-doo as it has been, perhaps, but I'm not ready to go there yet. I still think it's a Seahawks division. Young Savage O, should the Packers go all out in free agency to help their terrible defense? I think they should be more aggressive in free agency, because here's the thing, is that if you don't go spend money in free agency, it's a lot easier to make the argument that, hey, the way we do things work because everybody on our team was, for the most part, in the starting lineup specifically, was either drafted by the team or an undrafted free agent or whatever the case might be. Well, when you don't bring in free agents, that's pretty much what you're left with. And, you know, Ted Thompson's done some good things, but his front office has had some big misses too in recent years in the draft. And at some point in time, you have a diminishing amount of time where you're going to have Aaron Rodgers at the top of his game as an elite level quarterback. It'd be an awful shame for him and that organization if he ultimately only had one Super Bowl championship during his time. I think it's nice to have that formula and nice to think about team chemistry that comes along with keeping a team together for so long. But at some point, you got to get some better players. And sometimes that may come via free agency. He should be more aggressive. All out, though, is not necessarily the answer. But a little more proactive, especially if it makes sense, it's a right fit and everything else, then yes, indeed. Chet, Awesome Laser. Your all-time biggest draft misses, either guys that you slept on or guys that you overrated. Oof. And obviously there's been plenty. The first one that I could think of from a slept-on standpoint is Von Miller. I just totally missed on him back in 2011. I didn't get it, I didn't see it, and I was completely and totally wrong. One guy I could think of back in, 2009, Aaron Curry. I'm not the only one, but I thought he had big-time stuff, and clearly he didn't. And there's been a lot of other guys over the years. And it's not just to sit there and try and protect myself. I just honestly can't remember a ton of them at this point. But I'm sure. They're in every draft class, honestly. And part of the challenge sometimes is when you do it, like from my perspective, I'm not doing big boards or prospect rankings or film evaluation based off of how a prospect fits a specific team, a specific defense or offense, a specific coaching staff system. So there's a larger variance for error there. And sometimes there's a lot of factors. I think recently Kevin White has been a huge mistake by me. Apparently, I incredibly overrated his ability to stay on the football field. And it is what it is. Wrong is wrong. And if I'm going to brag about all the times I'm right, then I got to eat shit and like the taste of it when I'm wrong. And when it came to Kevin White, I was massively freaking wrong, period. Junior asks, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank Obama's reign as president? Probably somewhere in the 7 to 7.5 category. He did some good things. The auto bailout helped that industry quite a bit. He tried to do some other good things. Reforming our healthcare system would be one of them. Although what we got was not what was originally intended, so it's convenient now to knock a piece of legislation that became law when it wasn't even what it was originally designed to be, talking about the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. There were disappointments. I thought at times his leadership on issues pertaining to Ferguson, Baltimore was very lacking. There were times where he needed to go and he needed to be there and he just didn't. His overusage of drones and kind of reckless usage of drones, his support for unconstitutional spying programs bothers me tremendously. The last several years of his presidency obviously were incredibly handicapped by a Republican Congress that was determined to undercut him every step of the way. So that's bad. So he did some good, he did some bad. To me, he was somewhat disappointing, but he wasn't terrible. And he could have done better, but there could have been more support for him too. So I would say somewhere between a 7 to a 7.5, I feel like is a fair grade, without overhyping him too much and without over burying him too much. Yakum Flavor, Bears' biggest need outside of a new head coach. Wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3. I think you can watch the team and clearly see that. J. Alex of Reviews. Michael Jordan, Hulk Hogan, Serena Williams, stuck on a sinking ship. You can only save one. Who do you save? Crying emoji, crying emoji, crying emoji, crying emoji. You must have thought this was really funny, motherfucker. Well, let me tell you something, brother. Number one, if Hulk Hogan is stuck on a sinking ship, he's going to be able to maneuver via backstage politicking and get the water to not absorb the boat. So I don't have to worry about Hogan, asshole. Then we go to Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Michael Jeffrey Jordan would have probably not wanted to be on that boat to begin with because of a fear of water that goes back to his days as a kid where he almost got caught in a riptide and died. But even if he did, the man saved the universe from the basketball-playing aliens called monsters. What makes you think he needs to be saved? What makes you think that the boat wouldn't immediately patch itself up because of the greatness of Michael Jordan? So I don't need to save him. I'm obviously going to save Serena Williams because, number one, she would thank me by allowing me to put another baby inside of her, and then I would continue to ruin her tennis career by pumping as many babies in her as I possibly could. Not a tough question to answer, frankly. Try again, motherfucker. And then Dexter C73 closes us out by asking, what should NFL players do tomorrow in response to Trump? You know, the whole thing about take a knee, I understand it and I get it, but it shouldn't take in all of this for you, a lot of these players to finally decide to do it. Where was your courage last year when you basically left Kaepernick out to fucking dry? Where was your courage this year? To me, it's a bunch of punk-ass bullshit if you ask me. They should have been doing it last year, showing support for their guy, knowing that he was right to a certain degree. In an ideal world, you would do nothing. You wouldn't feed the troll, you would ignore the troll. But ultimately, players should do whatever the hell they want to do tomorrow. It's that simple. If they want to take a knee, take a knee. If they want to stand erect with their hand over their heart for the national anthem, do that. I'm okay with either, honestly. And I'm really, honestly, not going to be paying much attention because I'm just there to watch football. That's my way to try and cope with it and deal with it, honestly. So thanks for all of your questions, guys. That's it for this one. It went a little longer than I thought, but I'll see you later.